When I started work at a hotel near my home, I was pretty contented. It paid good money, I could sleep in one of the empty rooms overnight, and I got to meet some really nice people. Being a concierge was probably the best thing I could have dreamt about being at that point in my life. However, all of that changed on New Year's Day of a particular year. By some stroke of ill luck, I was scheduled to be on duty that day. Even though I was receiving extra payment for working during a holiday, it still didn't sit well with me. The first day of the year should be spent with your families and loved ones, you know? Not in a hotel wearing a suit that may just be too small for you, or carrying pieces of luggage that you do not care for. But it was what it was, and on that New Year's Day, I was in the hotel lobby greeting people and helping them with their bags. Soon enough, it was night. My shift ends at 10, and about 9:30, I was itching to leave. But this wouldn't be a scary story if nothing scary happened. So, just as I was planning on leaving, the receptionist called me. Apparently, she just received a puzzling call from someone upstairs. The call came from room 302, and she wanted me to check if everything was all right. After that, you can leave, she said. Just one last errand before I leave, I thought. This shouldn't take long. When I got to room 302, I knocked on the door. No one answered it. That was weird. It was an especially uncomfortable situation for me because hotel policy is to always receive a clear "come in" before entering the room of guests. After 5 minutes of knocking, I eventually gave up. Why? Hotel policy says that you can enter a room if you believe the inhabitant is in danger. And so I did. The room was pitch black, and as I struggled to flip the light switch, I noticed that something scurried over my hand. I withdrew my hand in shock. I shouted into the void, "Is anyone here?" That's when I heard a groan from the bathroom. Well, at least we were getting somewhere, I thought. I didn't want to reach out to the light switch anymore, so I instead brought out my phone and shone its light. The scene I saw was one that shook my bones to the marrow. The bed was bloodied like someone had performed surgery on it. There was nobody, and in a corner I saw rats the size of shoes. My phone immediately dropped in my shock. As I reached to pick it up, I heard the door lock behind me and leathery hands grasp my neck. I fell to the ground, gasping for air. This isn't how I wanted to die, but it appeared that I would have to settle for this. Soon, my phone's light switched off, and I felt a rat run over my face, and then another, and then 3. I felt rubbery feet crawl all over my face, and soon it dawned on me that this fellow was pinning me to the ground and was somehow running across my face with rats. I was gasping for air at this point, and I was almost passing out. In that second, when I thought my life was over, I heard police voices, and the person pinning me down was lifted off of me. After the entire episode, I heard what really happened. Apparently, the person staying in room 302 was mob affiliated. They had, for some reason, annoyed someone really high up, and that person had sent a henchman to scare the hotel guest. The henchman decided to do this with a gallon of fresh sheep's blood in a watertight bag and some rats. The guest, knowing that his life was in danger, had hidden in the bathroom and locked the henchman outside. The henchman basically just waited, and that was the jolly scene that I had interrupted. It was by far the scariest night of my life. A motel is the worst place to stay. I'm just putting this out there in case someone ever asks you where the worst place to stay is. The answer is a motel. And I'm not just saying this because it's a fun thing to say, I'm saying this because of my experience. A few years ago, I had cause to go on a cross-country journey. It was during the holidays, and unfortunately, I missed my flight. Since all the flights were booked, I decided I would travel by road on my own. After a few hundred miles, I got sleepy. I spied a motel on the side of a lonely road and decided to spend the night there. That way, I would be able to get some rest and continue my journey in the morning. The motel was a tiny affair and had only about 10 or so rooms. The caretaker told me I was the only guest they had that night. I didn't have anything to do with that information, so I forgot all about it. I settled in for the night and expected to wake up the next morning. I didn't. I woke up later that night. It was 11:30, and surprisingly, my door was open. I was shocked. I rubbed the sleep out of my eyes and stood up from my bed. I checked for my devices and discovered that they were still there with me. So no, it wasn't a robbery, but that didn't make it any less scary. While I was thinking of this, I heard a loud scream from directly behind me. It was ethereal, like someone was screaming for her life. My instinct was to rush downstairs to find out what was happening, but at that minute, my door slammed shut. And that's when I started hearing a slow wheezing sound and a rhythmic tap of a staff. I went to my window to look down, but it seemed all the streetlights had gone out. I heard the scream again, and this time it chilled my bones. My palms started to sweat. I went over to the door, double-locked it, and went to my bed. Throughout the night, I continued to hear screams. The next morning when I checked out, I asked the caretaker if she had heard anything that night. She told me, with a perfect smile, that she had not heard anything. Being a cleaner in a hotel isn't the worst job in the world. I mean, it's not the greatest job, but there are jobs that are way worse than it. Imagine being a cleaner at a mortuary, or somewhere prone to silence like a big cathedral. Point is, I was content with my job. It wasn't the greatest in the world, but I was happy. But you know what they say, happiness doesn't last forever. I'm usually on the night shift. My job includes cleaning bed sheets and taking care of rooms after guests have checked out. Sometimes I see interesting things, like a leftover note or even some cash, and other times I see things that make me jump out of my mind in fear. On this fateful day, I was to clean the room of a family that had just checked out. It was supposed to be a regular clean, change the sheets, the towel, vacuum, and all that. It turned out to be a nightmare. It was a suite, so immediately when I entered, I started with the living area. I closed the door and noticed that the place looked particularly dirty. Cans littered the floor, and the room had a pungent smell. I sighed. It appeared that I would have to spend the whole day cleaning. And it was at that moment that I heard it. The gunshots were rapid. I fell to the floor and took cover. I could hear people downstairs running and screaming. I crawled into the bathroom of the room. Unfortunately, it was when I got to the bathroom that I remembered that I'd forgotten to lock the door. A few minutes later, my worst fear came to pass. I heard the door of the suite being opened. Immediately after, I heard the sound of gunshots. It appeared to me that the shooter had just entered the room and started shooting. He started shouting in a foreign language, and my brain immediately went into existential crisis mode. What would happen if he decided to search the suite? What would happen when he found me crouched near the toilet seat? Would he kill me? Since it appeared that he had a policy of kill first, ask questions later, I supposed that he would indeed kill me. I proceeded to pee myself a little. The shooter, apparently surprised that no one had gotten hit by his bullets, started searching the suite. He was almost at the door of the bathroom, and I was almost at the edge of death when I heard police sirens. I heard a curse and hiss and heard as the shooter left the room. When the police came, I was able to leave the room. Apparently, the shooter had managed to kill 3 security men. Unfortunately, even though the police were right on time, they were never able to catch him.